everybody, you're really welcome back to another one of our chats in this series of discussions that we've been having between Linda Brannock from therapyandtraining.ie and myself, Melissa Moore. We've been invited back by Meath County Council Libraries in conjunction with the Healthy Ireland initiative in your libraries. So Linda, would you like to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi Melissa, and hi everybody. It's great to be back. It's a bit of a surprise to be back, still in similar circumstances than we were here before, but lovely to chat to you all again. So my name is Linda Brannock of therapyandtraining.ie. I'm a counsellor, psychotherapist and a lecturer and trainer, and I've been working in the field for about 20 years, but I am also a mum of 4, and I think, well, I don't want to speak for you, Melissa, but I know only too well the challenges that we're going through, both in work and in our family lives, in dealing with all the challenges that 2020 are presenting to us. And so it's lovely to chat to everybody again. Thanks.
Thanks, Linda, for that. So I'm Melissa. As I said before, I'm an accredited play therapist based here in Duleek in County Meath, and I've been working with families and their children for over 20 years. So usually working with children who present with behavioural or emotion difficulties, offering parent support sessions, and I also go into schools and nurseries and creches doing workshops for children. And I'm also now doing workshops for corporate companies, helping their staff around parenting issues at home. So things are changing, I suppose, for everybody. You know, and Linda, even I suppose in the work that yourself and I find myself doing in the last 6 months or so is changing all the time. Yeah. And you know, we last had one of these chats, I think maybe in August or so, just before the kids went back to school. And I suppose we all hoped we'd be in different situation than what we are. We're finding ourselves back to where we were kind of in March time, surprisingly enough. And I suppose with that, we've had 6 months of most of us been working at home, having children off school, not knowing what's going to happen next week, I suppose. So with that, there's been lots of relationship challenges. So today we're going to just kind of have a look at that and how we manage the changes in our relationships between, you know, husband, wives, partners, friends, family, children, all of that. It's all just kind of been turned on its head, hasn't it, in the last 6 months?
Yeah, and I forgot to say that actually. So a good part of my work is with couples as well as with individuals and groups. So I work a lot with relationships. And while I suppose the way I'm working with people hasn't really changed, the presenting issues have. And like a huge percentage of issues that, you know, is challenging relationships is to do with COVID, whether it's directly or indirectly affecting people. It's in the air, and all the life adjustments, the work adjustments, everything that we've had to change, all the things that we do that isn't normal. It's not normal what we're doing. And I don't think it ever should be what we're doing at the moment. And all the adjustment and the struggle we have with that is testing and challenging our relationships with ourselves and each other, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. But I suppose with that comes all the different variations of relationships, you know, and maybe this time last year when you would have said to me relationships, I would have automatically thought of, you know, the husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, those kind of relationships, or, you know, different types of partners. But I suppose now even that kind of definition we're thinking a lot more of, you know, is it, you know, the employer, the employee, you know, colleagues, friends, but, you know, children, the relationship even that your kids have between each other and between you as a parent has totally changed, you know. Like one of the big questions that I'm getting from parents lately is, like, how do I manage? I'm at home working, trying to work, my kids come in from school, and how do we manage that relationship even of, I suppose, the sense of guilt that I'm stuck in a room in the house trying to work and my children are outside looking for me, but I can't go out to them because I'm working. So how do we manage? And that's just one typical one that I'm getting from parents. I'm sure you get lots more because you're working with a lot more adults than what I would work with.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think, well, relationships, of course, romantic relationships are very diverse, of course, and we have we have loads of diversity in that. But we also have, I suppose, the relationships that are being challenged now more than ever, it's, you know, the relationships that we're talking about, like you say, it's not just couple relationships, not just romantic relationships. It's our relationships with our colleagues in work, it's our relationships with each other, with our friends, with our family members. And it's all being tested because all the spontaneity, the normal social events, the normal activities in the evening, the people we used to bump into on the sideline or on our walk, or, you know, if we were working in an office in the canteen, or bumping into them on the way in and out, or out the toilet, and all the chat and the banter and stuff that we took for granted. The person we kind of might have sat beside on the bus, sitting beside somebody on the bus doesn't even happen anymore, you know, and it's all of that is gone. There's a huge loss with that. But then with the relationships that are still there, the challenges, like the things that we took for granted, the normal boundaries that were there are being tested. The normal spontaneity, the normal ways of communicating sometimes aren't fitting anymore, aren't quite working the way they used to. And anything that used to be beneath the surface, bubbling away, we won't look at that, we won't talk about that. That's all, you know, coming to the surface more than ever, and that's really hard, you know.
Yeah, and I can totally understand that. You know, I mean, the fights in this house are, we've got 3 kids, 3 teenagers here in the house. It's who's on the Wi-Fi? Get off the Wi-Fi! It's my turn for the laptop. And you know, and they're just, I suppose, things that I would refer to as being small things that you can work out. But they're small in my family, but I'm sure in the next family they could be huge, big things. And because it just depends on where people are at in their life and what issues they have going on for them, and you know, what finances are like.
Can I just say on that, Melissa, that you've just hit the nail on the head there, because I think a huge percentage of issues, and we will be talking in one of our other conversations around stress management and anxiety and how hard we are on ourselves, but a big thing around how we treat ourselves and each other in relationships and how we resolve things is how we can sometimes dismiss something as a small thing. I love the way you named it there. What's small for you might not be small for somebody else. And that could be true of a relationship as well. So one person in the couple might, you know, be freaking out over, you know, the way the dishwasher isn't emptied or the way it's stacked or whatever. Or likewise, a colleague in work, you know, isn't happy with the way, well, obviously it's not sharing printers or anything like that anymore, but maybe about how, you know, calls on Teams are being managed, or the email communication might not be quite the same. The etiquette or the netiquette is the phrase I'm hearing people use. And people have different interpretations of that. And they're all challenges to the communication. But I suppose my point is that it doesn't matter. The story, the narrative, the problem, the presenting issue isn't as relevant as how it affects us. Whatever way it affects us is the bit that we need to give a bit of permission to and a bit of space to, and acknowledging how things affect us. And sometimes it is about, you know, having that deeper awareness. Oh, I know what this is about. I'm feeling a bit threatened here, or I'm feeling a bit judged, or I doubt myself in the first place. So I'm just looking for something to come at me, thinking that it's going to, you know, justify the thoughts that I have about myself already. And, you know, often there's stuff like that at play underneath when there's communication or miscommunication happening. And I think, you know, just what you were saying there about the small problems and the big problems, and what that definition is, nobody knows, because if it's big for you, it's big for you, and that's all that matters, and that's what needs to be heard, you know, and understood. And that's probably the key part of what we're discussing today around communications. We're talking about communications in relationships, but so a lot of, you know, people, like you said, assume relationship is about the couple, the romantic relationship, but a lot of the stuff we're talking about today could be applied in all sorts of relationships. Yeah.
So Linda, in your experience, what can we do then to make things a little bit more manageable between relationships? Is there any tips that you can give us, or, you know, your insight?
Yeah, like I suppose there's kind of from all the different training and learning and experience that I would have had over the years, I've kind of narrowed it down to 5 key steps of communication. This is more specifically relevant to the romantic couple. However, it can, you know, bits of it can be applied then in how we communicate in general with our friends, family members, and work colleagues. So the 5 steps, the very first step in the 5-step, and ironically in romantic relationships and couples that come to me, for me to tell them to stop focusing on the other person and actually to turn the lens around and look at themselves and what's going on for me. That's huge, actually. That feels contradictory and it feels kind of ironic. They're in a relationship, they're coming for couple counseling, and I'm asking them to stop thinking about the other person and actually to tune into themselves. And that does sound contradictory, but the benefit of it is that you're often you know, a huge percentage of issues that come into the counselling room are around people not feeling heard or understood. And it's very hard to try and get somebody else to hear and understand you if you don't actually hear and understand yourself first. So the first step in the 5 steps would be check in with yourself. What's going on for me? Is this really about where they throw the shirt beside the laundry basket? Or is it about something else? What buttons does that push in me? Why does that get to me so much? Because I have to take responsibility for that bit. So there's no point in me trying to get somebody to understand me unless I understand myself. And so that would be the first step. Check in with yourself. What's going on for me? And what do I want the other person to understand about what's going on for me?
And you know, like, I suppose often we don't actually give our time or give ourselves the time and space to be even able to do that, you know, especially if you're busy and you've got young kids or you've got a busy career or whatever, you're on the go the whole time. And it's like you really are right. It's about that, it's really that self-care piece, isn't it? Giving yourself 5 minutes and say, okay, why has that bugged me so much?
Yeah.
Like what is it about it? You know, and sometimes the thing that bugs you so much, the next person or your whoever the person is in the relationship with you doesn't know that has bugged it, or you know, it has been
they can't understand. And in fact, they can't even hear it, because if the next step is to express it, and to express it from the I feel. So to own it and say, I feel this, not to say, I feel that you did, or I feel that you're or, you know, it's not I feel that you at all, because that's I think. So it's actually to say, I feel when this happens, I feel this way. And it's not you make me feel, it's I feel. So if you take out the you make me feel, if you take out the you did and the you said or you are, if you take all those parts out of it, well, then the listener, their defenses are going to come down a little bit, and they're going to be more open to hearing what you have to say. So we're trying to get both people into a place of listening to understand rather than listening to interrupt. And so, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I suppose what you're saying is then, you know, if we automatically start off on the blame sentence, then like your back is going to be up, isn't it? The other person that you're trying to get your message across to is going to be automatically ready for a fight. So so it's about choosing your words correctly, isn't it? You know,
well, you're feeling criticized. Of course you're going to be, and I know how that feels. And you're feeling like, what are you accusing me of now? And I need to have my backup. I need to have my defenses up. I need to be able to say, no, it wasn't Tuesday, it was Wednesday, and no, I wasn't 15 minutes late, I was 10 minutes late, and what are you going on for? And there's no understanding. Then there's just defending, there's explaining, there's clarifying, there's tete-a-tete, head stuff, kind of, you know, the story is being challenged, the facts are being challenged, and two people start talking at each other when nobody's actually trying to understand. And both people then feel misunderstood, because the person who's been blamed and accused is in defense and going, what the hell are you accusing me of? I don't understand what I did wrong here. Actually, the intention this end wasn't like that at all. And the person that's freaking out or saying whatever it is that they're saying, you know, there's vulnerability under that too, that they haven't tuned in with themselves, let alone trying to help the other person understand. So that I feel statement can really work really well, but we have to take responsibility for the I feel. And actually, nobody can argue with you. Nobody can say, no, you don't feel that. They might say, I don't understand why you feel like that. And they might go into, but it didn't, and And that doesn't matter, because and it takes away the intention part as well. You're not saying that the other person did it on purpose or not. You're just saying when this happened. So when you're 15 minutes late 5 days a week, it reminds me of when I was left at the school gates and nobody collected me, whatever, you know. If you're saying I feel, and this is how it is for me, and it mightn't be as heavy or as obvious as that, but if you can connect with what's going on for you and have that as your aim in expressing what's going on, then it changes the dynamic of the whole conversation.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Linda, the I feel is really a conversation starter as opposed to the conversation ender, you know, where we would have said, you did, or I think you know, that sort of thing. So makes perfect sense.
Sometimes tongue in cheek, when I have couples in the therapy room, I say that I'm asking them to do the same thing as I ask my kids to do. So if they come in after a little bit of a disagreement in the back garden or whatever, often the kids will come in going, he did this and she did that and whatever. And I say, I don't want to hear what the other person did. What did you do? And I say that with the couples as well. Like, instead of looking at what the other person did, what's going on for you? Where were you with that? And what happened for you? Because we focus, it is ironic, we're in a couple, we spend all our time as we set up the relationship, we're focusing on the other person, we're getting to know them, we're getting to understand them, we're falling in love with them. And then after X amount of time, we get to a stage where we start getting frustrated with some of the things that we were attracted to in the first place, or we start getting misreading signals, or assuming is a big thing that happens in communication, full stop, in all sorts of communication, in all relationships. Assuming can do a lot of damage without checking. So whatever is going on for us, we can misread the signals, or think that something is personal about us as a criticism when it might not be. And that's okay. It's okay for us, because we're only human and we only have our own filters to see the world through. But we have to take responsibility for that in ourselves. But that's a whole other conversation. But that whole thing around that irony around separating a couple, or in a work scenario, literally just taking the focus off, why don't they do this? Why can't they change? Why do, to actually kind of put it back on ourselves. Well, what's going on for me? What do I need right now? How is this affecting me? Where is that coming from? And what do I need to do? Because I can't control or change, whether it's my boss, my sister, my friend, my cousin, my parent, my partner, whatever it is. I can't change other people. I can help them to understand me if they're open to it, but I have to understand myself first. So that's the first two steps. One is understanding where you're at, checking in with yourself, and two is expressing where you're at. But the third bit is I think it's the most important step, and it's the step we get stuck on most often, and that's checking for understanding. Because sometimes in communication, when we say something, we assume that the person heard what we said in the way we meant it, and that doesn't always happen. So even as we're talking now, you might come away from this conversation taking away certain things. I might come away taking different things. And the people watching in might, again, have another view. And what the truth of that is, nobody knows. It's you have your truth, I have my truth, and other people have their truth. So when I'm in a therapy room with a couple, it doesn't really matter what I think. It doesn't really matter what one person or what another person thinks, in terms of coming in. The relationship is the client when I'm working with a couple, and how they communicate with each other. And so if they disagree, that's okay. But it's about bringing in the skills and the tools of communication that worked well in other areas of their relationship to help them to figure this out. Well, how are we going to continue to work together? So that third step of checking in and making sure that the other person has heard you and understood you correctly is really, really important. Because if you move on to any other steps and you're not on the same page with step 1 and 2, then you're, it's rife for communication breakdown.
And absolutely, Linda. And I suppose as a mother of 3 teenagers, plus working with families all of the time, I suppose I see that all the time with the direction a parent gives to their child, but particularly the teens, and the rows that happen within families because 15-year-old Johnny thinks his mommy said A, B, and C, and mommy thinks she said A, B, and C to 15-year-old Johnny, but actually part of that has actually been lost somewhere along the lines. So it is, and even here in my own house, I have said things and my kids have picked them up completely wrong to what I've said it. So it is really important to kind of say, okay, I have said this, and this. What do you understand? Or what did you hear me? What do you think I've said? And even get your children, I suppose, to relay back to you the words that you've said, so that there is a very clear understanding and that you're on the both of you are on the same page.
And likewise, if they come back home from school and they have an issue, that we take responsibility for saying, am I hearing you right? So if we're the listener, we say, am I hearing you right? If we're the message giver, we say, can I just check, what did you just hear me say? And I do that a lot in my work. Can I just check, what are you taking from what I'm saying right now? And honestly, a huge percentage of times, it's not the same as the intention of what I meant to get across. But that gap, the gap between what I'm saying and what they're hearing gives real opportunity then for clarifying. It's not a bad thing if somebody hears it, once we can work with it and say it out loud, if they don't hear it exactly as I meant it. That there's lots of room then for improving communication and understanding. And it's a brilliant opportunity for a couple to get to a better level of understanding. Because by that stage, hopefully, if we've done step 1 and step 2, the defenses are down, people are open to listening and hearing a little bit better. And even if they're mishearing or if it's being missaid, that's okay. That can be cleared up because the openness is there. So it's, so that's the step that we get stuck on a lot. And then this sounds very slow and tedious, but the next step as a result of that then is, because in the old way of you did this, you did that, and no, I didn't, it was a Wednesday, it was a Tuesday, that just gets nowhere, right? And it moves into like that. So that listener person is moving into, I couldn't have because I didn't have the money, or because it didn't, the bus never came, or because whatever reason. So they have an excuse, they have a defense, they have an explanation, they have a clarification, a justification, a denial, whatever it is. And you're trying to kind of nip that in the bud. So by doing my steps, often couples get a little bit frustrated and impatient because I'm going, step 1, okay, now how are you really feeling? Step 2, now can you say that out loud? And then step 3, can you, because the person who's listening wants to go, yeah, but no, but yeah, but, and I'm going, but can I just check, what have you heard? For person number 1, can you check with person number 2, what has your partner heard? And then the partner says, okay, I'm understanding that you said this, but I just want it. And it's like, okay, can we just slow down? And then step 4, again, it takes a lot of patience, but it is that step of, okay, now that you've heard and understood your partner expressing how they feel, how does that feel for you? And that is really hard, because often people go into what they think and what they want to defend again. And I'm like, but can you just, what's it like for you, the person that you care about beside you? Now that's obviously in romantic relationships, but it might still be just a work colleague where you got on really well before lockdown, and all of a sudden there's a breakdown in communication because it's over Teams and chat and email, and you're not really talking to each other the way you would have in the past over the coffee or the smoke break or the lunch or whatever. And what's it like for you to feel that? So you mightn't go into that much detail in a professional relationship, but it still might be helpful to check in with yourself again. How do I feel now that I know that about that person? How is it affecting me? And then step 5 would be doing what you normally would do with step 2, which is your response and your clarification, and hopefully not as defensive.
And I know, like you're saying, it sounds a little bit tedious and long-winded, and there is 5 steps to it, but I'm sure with a bit of practice it just becomes automatic then, doesn't it? It's you're developing new habits really in life. And I suppose at the end of the day, if you are in a scenario where you have children, you are constantly you're always their role model. They're learning from all of your behaviors. So by you, certainly from me as a children's therapist, if I see parents communicating effectively like what you're talking about, Linda, then I know that their children are learning that by watching and by listening, and that's how they grow up. And I suppose it's about constantly opening that line of communication between the other adult or the person that we're talking about here, but also you're opening up a line of communication between you and your children, so that they know that when they come in from school, or that they have a problem with their friends, or they've got a problem with their part-time job, or whatever it is, that when they come home to talk to mommy or daddy, they're going to actively listen, because this is what you're describing. It's active listening. It's, you're empathizing with them, you've heard them, and you're always relaying back to them, okay, this is what I think has happened, this is what I think you're telling me, am I right, or have I got a bit of it wrong? And then, as a mom and a child, or a dad and a child, you're problem solving together. And that line of communication is there forever to come. And I suppose that's the really important part.
But you're also modeling it for them to apply. So if they have an issue with a colleague in their part-time job, or on their college team that they're doing a project together or whatever, or in school when they're just doing their little projects or whatever, that, or in the yard, that they are now getting more confident in expressing their needs, really, without the blame and the criticism, and actually owning what they find difficult and dealing with it. So it's not just, I think the ripple effect then would be wider than the family, that it'll be good role modeling for outside in their ordinary life as well.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes certainly with people that I come across in my work, sometimes we forget about, I suppose, our behavior and our actions has such an implication on our children. And going back to what you said earlier on, like, tuning in with how you are feeling. So tuning in, is this situation making you angry? Is it making you upset? Are you getting anxious? Your children are around you all the time, and they can pick up on all of your feelings as well. So it really, really, really is important that we are tuning into our own feelings for a number of different reasons.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like it's all very transferable what you're talking about here. I know you're talking mostly about adults, but I suppose for me, all of the skills that you're talking about are so transferable to children. You know, and in any scenario that we face in life.
It sounds contradictory. It's about personal responsibility for our own emotions, for our own experiences. So we're not blaming and projecting and putting it on to everybody else. But ironically, sometimes you think personal responsibility, oh God, what extra stuff have I got to do? But actually, it's also empowering. So that frees you up then. So you don't feel so trapped. Oh, I can't do this because every time I do it, you say this or you do that or whatever. And it moves. And whether that's a child to a parent or an adult to another adult in a work situation, a college situation, you know, a relationship kind of situation, it doesn't matter. It's about that kind of personal responsibility and empowerment in how we communicate and in how we own our experiences.
Okay. And I suppose, you know, during COVID, I'm sure there are typical examples maybe that you have that are coming up, or topics, different types of topics that are coming up that are causing difficulty in relationships. And I suppose, you know, maybe you might have some idea just by kind of how we manage them, or is it all what we've talked about applying to them as well? Is there anything in particular that has really come up for you as a therapist?
Like lots. I'm thinking of even the corporate workshops that I'm running with students who are training as therapists, with with counselors who are coming to me with their for supervision with their clients, and with the clients that I'm working with, couples and individuals. There's just very little in all of that work at the moment that isn't related directly or indirectly to COVID. So of course, the obvious one is people who have people close to them who are vulnerable or sick, or people who they've lost through COVID or otherwise in the last few months. And my heart is just breaking. I know people, I've lost family member myself, and, you know, just all those rituals are gone, and the normal rituals of going to visit somebody in hospital, supporting somebody, you know, and then when you lose somebody, supporting, you know, around the funeral ritual, that's all gone. And that it's just not, doesn't feel normal for us as Irish people not to have all that open for us. And that's kind of the obvious one. And then on a more subtle one, it's people disagreeing around, you know, how they interpret all these regulations and restrictions that keep changing, and the guidelines. And it's regularly coming up where, you know, a client might be rigidly sticking to the guidelines and hasn't seen anybody for ages, and then their sister or their neighbor is off partying and not wearing masks and not social distancing, and that real struggle, and that brings up real anxiety. And again, we're going to talk about that in one of our other conversations, but that whole thing around, you know, how we can't control other people, which applies directly to all sorts of relationships. And so the COVID specific things is around, you know, it's coming up in everything, you know, anxiety around sending children to school, you know, parents disagreeing about whether to send the kids to school or not, or to let them go around to their friend's house or not, you know, regardless of where we're at on the restrictions and the levels that the government are advising. There's just so many grey areas in it. It seems black and white sometimes, but then people are interpreting it their own ways, and that's really hard. It's never, obviously it's very new for us as therapists to have to deal with, but I suppose we use the same principles, which is like our work is about empowering our clients to focus on what they can control and let go of what they can't, and to manage and mind and be patient with themselves around the struggles, and to try and keep perspective, and again to acknowledge the emotions that are underneath, that they're valid and normal and understandable, but to watch the spiraling thoughts or the impulsive behaviors that might come from that. So that applies in relationships as well. In terms of our communication, we need to take responsibility for ourselves in all of the messages that we give, and we need to let go of, you know, if we're in a relationship and one person wants to do one thing and another person wants to do the other. I personally think 6 months ago, nobody was wrong to do any of it, any side of the argument, whatever it is. So it's normal to want to go against guidelines. It's not right. It's not advised. And I certainly wouldn't do it myself, but I can understand how hard it is for people to stay within restrictions, you know, so for so long, you know, and and I can see that people are really starting to suffer with it, and it's not easy. And as I'm sure you can see in your work too, it's just such a challenge for all of us to keep going and to keep perspective. I think keep hope, keep perspective, and keep connected, because there's more and more blocks getting in the way of communicating and connecting with other human beings, which isn't normal.
No, and I suppose I think that piece of missing that, you know, so that connection piece, the physical connection, I think is, I really feel it missing. I have to say, you know, because you know, I would be very much a go out person, and you know, stopping for chat and all of that, you know, and not being able to go and see your family, and you know, it's just it's you know, and I'm at home with other people in my house. I can't actually imagine what it would be like for people living by themselves, or who are isolated physically, or you know.
And then back, and speaking of relationships, you know more about this than me in terms of working with under 18s, but what about the normal developmental stages of like little romantic relationships that the teenagers have? They move into kind of their first kiss, and you know, the hand holding and all the connecting and the flirting and all the excitement that goes with that. And now that's just guilt ridden. That's just not safe. It's not appropriate, and it's just so laden with issues, and it's temporary, or it has been temporary, but and it's not the end of the world. I'm sure they'll get over it, but it's you know, time, a year or 6 months at that age is such a long time, and you know, it's another big obstacle to develop to what I understand to be a normal developmental stage, you know.
Absolutely, and it's very, very difficult to tell a teenager, you know, that they can't go and do A, B, or C. It was all right first time round, but I think they're finding it much more difficult to understand the second time. But I suppose, Linda, at the end of all this, what are your key messages to people who are struggling with difficulties in relationships?
Okay, so I've narrowed it down to 10 key points. And the first one I think is vital, whether you're in work or with a family member or a friend. You know, like I said, things that have been bubbling underneath the surface can start rapidly coming to the top of the surface with all we have going on right now. So the first tip would be pick your battles. You know, you don't have to deal with everything there and then. You know, swallow your tongue maybe more than you normally would and make allowances. The second one is you are only responsible for your own feelings. We've talked a bit about that already. You're not responsible for each other's. You're not responsible for your colleagues, for your parents, for your, you know, we all have responsibilities, but we're not responsible for the emotions and feelings of others who are equal to us. Maybe we can play more of an influential part on our children, but in general, we're not responsible for how somebody else feels. Do you want to say anything about that around the children piece, or did I clarify that?
Yeah, no, like I would always say to parents, you know, name the feeling that you're seeing in your children. I suppose, and I was thinking about this earlier on, you know, children who are having struggles, or who are having, who can't verbally talk about their emotions. They can't label it because most of them are so young. So their struggles come out in different ways to us as adults, and maybe not so different. I suppose, you know, children would display inappropriate behaviors maybe, or their moods might change, or their eating habits might change, and they might become withdrawn. You know, that might stop going out with their friends, when restrictions aren't as heavy as what they are at the minute. And maybe it's actually probably not so different actually as adults. It's just that adults can be more verbal, or you would hope they'd be more verbal better. But yeah, it definitely is about naming and acknowledging the feeling and the emotion that we're seeing in front of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And name it, and take responsibility for it, and not take responsibility for the feelings of others. The next one then is to keep in touch with friends and the wider family outside of your relationship. And what I've been saying day in, day out the last few weeks and months is try if you're about to send a WhatsApp or a text, try just pick up the phone and have the chat. You know, even if it is about arranging a bill to be paid, or I don't know, I'm trying to think of normal things, but we're in our 5 kilometer whatever, we're not even borrowing things off each other at the moment. But you know, whatever it is, if you were normally going to send a text, hi, how are things, maybe pick up the phone and say, hi, how are things, or on obviously FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, but try and have that conversation, because so much gets lost at the best of times in that written word kind of short text communication. So I would strongly recommend that people, and I have clients who have started to really make a change in that. And, because we didn't really need to, because it was always kind of face to face or a quick text to arrange a face to face, but we can't do that at the moment. So,
But I suppose, Linda, can I just say something on that? And I suppose if you're having a struggle with a particular person within a relationship, I certainly find that, what's sent in a text or a WhatsApp or an email can be completely misinterpreted.
Yeah, it can be completely misinterpreted. You're right, Melissa. Yeah.
So what's your next step then, Linda? Number 4, is it?
Yeah. So step 4 is trust. We're all doubting ourselves and each other a little bit more at the moment, but if we can, to try and trust each other, trust that the intention is good, even if you do feel hurt or let down, it's not always done on purpose. And if we can try and think, the best rather than the worst sometimes, just to kind of go easy on ourselves and each other. Step 5 then, is just around, maybe if a colleague in work, everybody's doing different roles, whether we're in the family or in work or in the local club or whatever, we're all kind of stepping outside our comfort zone in a lot of ways. And if somebody is trying to help in whatever way that might be, to maybe let them help on their own terms. They might not be getting it right, or they might not be doing it your way, whatever that is. So just to make an allowance for that, and to go easy on people who are trying. At least they're trying. Yeah. So the next step, step 6. Were you going to say something there, Melissa?
I was just going to say, I think it's important to acknowledge the attempt, the piece that we try, even for our kids, even if it's, the bed's not made in the morning to your standards, that it's, thanks for doing that. Thanks for doing your best. Especially now when everything else is negative around us.
Yeah. And that applies in everything. That applies in the local shop, in the, in our work, our team environment, with our colleagues, with our bosses, with our teams, in our relationships with our friends or family members. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Acknowledging somebody's efforts and saying thank you and hearing them and acknowledging and noticing that they did or they tried. It makes a real difference, because everybody's feeling the pressure right now.
It does, and I think sometimes we don't acknowledge the impact that our words have on somebody, so it could be, Linda, you could be saying something nice to somebody that has to go home to an empty house or has lost somebody in their family, and those few kind words in your day don't cost us anything and probably mean nothing to us, but the world to somebody on the receiving end.
Yeah, absolutely. Which brings us on nicely to number 6. We can't change other people, only ourselves. And I think we've spoken a good bit about that earlier on, but really just to acknowledge that, to let go of what we can't control and just look at ourselves, understand ourselves, and change if we need to. And on that then, number 7 kind of is about how we criticize ourselves. So we might be criticizing our work colleague or our partner or our child, but we're also, I suppose often people are criticizing themselves internally without even noticing that they are, without even realizing it. And so we don't just criticize others, we criticize ourselves, and we mightn't be able to change that. That might be the habit of a lifetime. So I'm not asking anybody to flick a switch and all of a sudden change that in the middle of a pandemic. But even just to hear ourselves, just to notice when we are beating ourselves up and criticizing ourselves, just to notice could make such a big difference.
Yeah.
And just to kind of, I'm always banging that drum about self-compassion and kindness and patience, and treat ourselves like we would our friend. But it's just needed now more than ever to just be a little bit kinder to ourselves.
Absolutely. I think even giving yourself 5 minutes in the day for you, whether it's sit in the back garden with a cup of tea, or maybe not in this weather, but sit up in the bedroom, away from everybody, or you go for a walk down to the shop. It's just it's headspace, isn't it? It's
absolutely
so important.
Yeah. And then step 8 then is just communicate with 2 caveats. So the first one obviously is at the right time, in the right place. So maybe in the middle of Aldi isn't the right time to say what makes you feel angry, but but do think about what you want to say and make an effort to get it across and be understood. And the second caveat to that is to, as we said earlier, to use the I feel statement, not you did or you are or I think, but more I feel, to try and help the defenses to come down and help each other listen to understand rather than to interrupt.
I think that's my favorite one. My favorite tip for today is using the I feel. Yeah, absolutely, and to be able to use it more. But I suppose it's about stopping isn't it? It's about stopping thinking and
yeah,
closing your mouth before you decide to open it with the wrong words.
absolutely. So then 9 is take breaks from each other, which again in romantic relationships might sound contradictory, but it's healthy. You know, we're all kind of living under the same space and often working under the same roof as well, or studying, and that's hard going. So we need to take breathers too, and that's a healthy thing to do. And then the last one, number 10, is keep perspective. Nothing is permanent, and this too will pass. If things get overwhelming, write about it all. Include your feelings, not just your thoughts, in a journal. Sleep on it or go for a walk. This too will pass.
Brilliant. And I suppose we'll finish on that. This too will pass, because this pandemic will pass at some point. It's gone on a little bit longer, I suppose, than most of us thought we would be stuck at home for. But it will absolutely pass. Thank you, Linda, for all of that information, insightful information. It has definitely reminded me of, I suppose, some of the things I need to work a little bit harder on, especially that I feel one. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you've enjoyed that conversation that we've had, one of many more to come, hopefully. And thank you to Meath County Library, in conjunction with the Healthy Ireland Initiative in our libraries, for having us here today. You can have a little look, maybe if you'd like to have a look at Linda's website on therapyandtraining.ie, and my own is myspaceplaytherapy.com. So thank you again, and hopefully we'll see you soon someday.
Thanks, guys. Bye.